The morning sunlight streamed through the glass walls of Kingston Enterprises headquarters, painting golden stripes across the marble floor. The building looked more like a luxury hotel than an office. Everything was polished. The walls, the people, even the air. At the far end of the first floor was the cafeteria, sleek, quiet, and efficient. Behind the register stood Mia Harper, in a crisp uniform a size too big, her new employee badge dangling awkwardly from her collar. It was her first day. She had rehearsed polite smiles in the mirror that morning, promising herself she wouldn't mess up. She'd taken this job to save money for college tuition. Her father's medical bills had eaten through most of their savings, and this cafeteria job, though humble, meant hope. Mia was wiping the counter when the atmosphere in the lobby changed. A ripple of movement, murmurs, and quickened footsteps. Everyone seemed to straighten up. A man entered, flanked by two assistants and followed by a wave of security personnel. Alexander Kingston, the CEO, billionaire, genius, the man who'd turned a struggling tech startup into a global empire. He looked every bit the legend, tall, sharply dressed, his presence commanding without effort. He was on his phone, voice low but firm. People nodded as he passed, careful not to interrupt. Mia froze as he stopped in front of her counter. She wasn't supposed to serve him. That was usually the manager's job, but the manager was nowhere in sight. "Coffee. Black," he said without looking up. "Why yes, sir," Mia stammered, fumbling for the cup. Her hands shook slightly as she filled it, praying she wouldn't spill. Alexander slipped a coin from his pocket, absent-mindedly rolling it over his knuckles as he spoke into his phone. The motion was mesmerizing, practiced, elegant, like someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. Then he flipped it in the air, caught it, and dropped it on the counter as a tip. The coin spun and landed, tails up. Mia blinked. Something about that coin bothered her. Her older brother, Eli, used to be a street magician. He'd taught her every trick he knew, from sleight of hand to weighted coins. She could spot a trick coin from a mile away. And this one, it wasn't right. The edges were too thick on one side, the engraving slightly uneven. It wasn't balanced properly. If someone flipped that coin, it would always land tails. "That's the wrong trick," Mia blurted out before she could stop herself. Alexander paused mid-sentence, lowering his phone. His icy blue eyes lifted to her, calm, curious, unreadable. "What did you say?" Her heart skipped. She wanted to melt into the floor. I just meant, your coin. It's rigged. It'll never land heads up." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "You're telling me my lucky coin is fake?" She swallowed hard. "It's not fake, sir. Just weighted wrong. See that thicker rim? Whoever made it balanced it backward." For a moment, silence hung between them. One of his assistants gave her a disapproving glare, but Alexander's expression softened into intrigue. "You seem very sure," he said slowly. "My brother used to perform tricks like that. I've seen it 100 times." He studied the coin, then smirked faintly. "Interesting." Pocketing it, he gave a small nod. "Thank you, Miss Mia Harper." "Miss Harper," he said, testing her name as if committing it to memory. "Enjoy your first day." Then he walked away, disappearing into the elevator surrounded by his team. Mia exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Her coworker leaned over and whispered, "Do you know who that was?" Mia nodded weakly. "Yeah, and I think I just corrected him." Upstairs, that same coin rested in Alexander Kingston's pocket, moments away from deciding the fate of a $200 million deal. The conference floor on the 30th level of Kingston Enterprises looked like a world far removed from the cafeteria below. Thick glass walls framed a skyline that shimmered in morning light, while a long oak table stretched across the room like a throne for power itself. Every seat was filled, lawyers, executives, analysts, and reporters, all waiting for one thing: the signing of the $200 million merger between Kingston Enterprises and Grant Holdings. Alexander Kingston stood at the head of the table, posture straight, expression unreadable. His mind, however, wasn't fully on the papers spread before him. It lingered on a brief moment from earlier that morning, a young cashier's nervous voice echoing in his head. That's the wrong trick. He had brushed it off at first. But the memory wouldn't fade. Mia Harper's certainty, The way she'd noticed the smallest flaw in something so trivial, it nagged at him. Across the table, Victor Grant leaned back in his chair, confidence oozing from his smirk. Victor was everything Alexander wasn't. Loud, brash, charming in a reckless way. They had started together in business years ago as partners, but greed and ego had split them. Now, they were reuniting, not by choice, but by necessity. "Shall we begin?" Victor said, his grin sharp. "We've waited long enough for this moment." Alexander nodded. "Let's get to it." The legal teams exchanged folders. Numbers were read aloud, clauses confirmed, signatures awaited. Everything seemed routine, except for the last condition. Victor tapped his pen against the table. "You didn't think I'd let this happen without a bit of nostalgia, did you?" Alexander narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "The coin flip," Victor said. "Just like old times." A murmur rippled through the room. Everyone knew the story. How years ago, during their first joint venture, Alexander and Victor had decided the fate of their company with a coin toss. It had become legend in corporate circles, a symbol of risk, trust, and showmanship. Alexander's jaw tightened. "You can't be serious." "Oh, come on," Victor chuckled. "It's tradition. One flip, one result. Heads, I get controlling interest. Tails, you do." Reporters loved it. Cameras turned. The PR team whispered approval. A dramatic coin toss. It would make headlines. Victor smirked and reached into his jacket pocket. "I even brought your favorite coin." He placed it on the table, the same silver coin Alexander had handed him earlier that morning. Alexander's pulse quickened. The wrong trick. Mia's words hit him like a jolt. He looked at the coin carefully. The uneven edge, the shine, the tiny scratch near the rim. The very same flaw she had pointed out. Victor flipped it casually in his fingers. "Still lucky." Alexander forced a calm smile. "Always." He reached forward slowly, pretending to examine it. "Mind if I toss it? After all, it's my lucky coin." "Be my guest," Victor said. But as Alexander's fingers closed over the coin, he slipped it into his left pocket, and with a magician's subtlety, pulled out another identical one from his right. The real coin. Fair and balanced. He felt the weight difference instantly. One was off. The other was true. "Let's make it count," Alexander said, holding it high. The cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward. He flipped it. The coin spun through the air, glinting under the bright lights, a silver blur between two destinies. It hit the table, rolled, spun, slowed, heads. For a heartbeat, silence. Then cheers. Applause. Cameras flashed. Victor's smile faltered for the first time. "Well," he said, trying to sound casual, "luck's on your side again." Alexander extended his hand. "No, Victor," he said, with a faint smile. "Not luck. Balance." Victor shook his hand stiffly. The room erupted again, but Alexander barely noticed. As the noise swelled around him, he slipped his hand into his pocket, feeling the cold weight of the other coin, the rigged one. The one that could have cost him everything. Downstairs, somewhere far below, a young cashier was probably wiping tables, unaware that her quiet observation had just saved her CEO $200 million. The boardroom emptied slowly after the cameras stopped flashing. Executives congratulated one another, assistants gathered folders, and the PR team rushed to issue official press statements about a historic victory for Kingston Enterprises. But Alexander Kingston didn't move. He stood by the long glass window, watching the city skyline stretch endlessly below. The cheers and chatter around him felt distant, muffled, as though he were underwater. In his hand, he turned over a small object, the coin. The wrong coin. It gleamed innocently in the light, the uneven edge almost invisible unless you knew where to look. Such a tiny imperfection, yet it could have shifted the balance of a $200 million empire. He flipped it once between his fingers. It landed tails. Again. Tails. Always tails. "Clever, Victor," he muttered under his breath. "Very clever." His assistant, Daniel, stepped forward. "Sir, everything's signed. The merger is officially ours. Should I call for your car?" Alexander didn't answer right away. "Daniel," he said quietly, "find out where Victor got this coin." Daniel frowned. "Sir." Alexander turned, holding the coin out. "He used it for the flip. It's weighted." The color drained from Daniel's face. You mean he? Yes, Alexander said, slipping the coin back into his pocket. He planned to make me lose. If I hadn't switched it, we'd be surrendering control right now. Daniel's eyes widened. How did you? Alexander cut him off with a faint smile. A cashier told me. Daniel blinked. What? Downstairs. In the cafeteria. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. She saw it before I did. For the first time in years, Alexander felt something unfamiliar, humility. He was used to being the sharpest mind in every room, the one who saw what others missed. But this morning, a new employee making minimum wage had saved him from being outplayed. He walked out of the boardroom, ignoring the journalists calling his name, the cameras still flashing. His steps echoed down the hall as he headed toward the elevator. By the time the doors opened on the ground floor, the hum of corporate grandeur was replaced by the faint clinking of dishes and the smell of fresh coffee. The cafeteria looked exactly as it had that morning, ordinary, calm, unimportant. And there she was, Mia Harper, wiping down the same counter where it had all started. Her hair was tied back messily, a faint smudge of coffee on her sleeve. She looked up as he approached, and froze. Her first instinct was panic. Sir, did I do something wrong? Alexander shook his head slightly. On the contrary, he said. You might have just saved my company. She blinked. What? He placed the fake coin on the counter between them. You were right. It was the wrong trick. My former partner tried to use it to rig a deal. Her eyes widened. Seriously, I thought it looked off. That attention to detail, he said, his voice calm but sincere, is worth more than most people realize. Mia gave a small, nervous laugh. I didn't mean to interfere. I thought maybe I was being rude. He smiled. Not the polite, corporate smile everyone else got, but something genuine. Sometimes, speaking up at the right moment changes everything. He studied her for a moment. What's your background, Miss Harper? I'm studying business analytics, she said shyly. But tuition's, well, expensive. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. Consider this a down payment on your future. He handed her his card. Alexander Kingston, Chief Executive Officer. Her mouth fell open slightly. Sir, I don't. Call my office tomorrow, he said simply. I think we can find a better place for you than behind a cash register. Then, with a brief nod, he turned and walked away, leaving the coin glinting on the counter, a silent token of fate and chance. Mia stood frozen, staring after him, the CEO's card trembling in her hand. Around her, life in the cafeteria carried on as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But upstairs, the course of $1 billion future had shifted, all because a girl noticed the wrong trick. A week had passed since the merger that shook the financial world. News outlets still buzzed with headlines about Kingston Enterprises' $200 million triumph, and business analysts praised Alexander Kingston's brilliant intuition and unshakable confidence. But Alexander knew the truth. Intuition had nothing to do with it. It was a young cashier's keen eye that had saved everything. Inside his sleek corner office, sunlight glinted off the city's skyline as he flipped through a report, the first joint venture with the newly merged company. Victor Grant, predictably, had gone silent after the deal. His little sabotage attempt hadn't just failed, it had exposed him for the kind of man Alexander had always suspected him to be. A soft knock broke his thoughts. Daniel stepped in, holding a file. Sir, the HR department finalized your request. Good, Alexander said without looking up. Is she here? Daniel smiled slightly. Yes, sir. Waiting in the lobby. Alexander stood, straightening his suit. Send her in. Moments later, the glass doors opened, and Mia Harper stepped hesitantly inside. She wore the same uniform from her first day, though her posture was a little more confident now. Her eyes darted around the grand office, the tall bookshelves, the massive desk, the panoramic view, everything that screamed power and success. Mr. Kingston, she said softly. You wanted to see me. Alexander gestured for her to sit. Yes, I owe you more than a thank you, Miss Harper. She flushed. Sir, I really didn't do anything special. Oh, but you did, he said, smiling faintly. You paid attention. You saw what everyone else missed, including me. That small observation of yours saved this company. Mia looked stunned. I just said what I noticed. And that, he said, leaning forward, is exactly the kind of instinct I need. He handed her the file Daniel had brought in. This is an offer letter. A junior analyst position in our quality control division. You'll assist in auditing and product review, making sure nothing slips through the cracks. Her mouth fell open. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he replied simply. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. Sir, I don't have the degree yet. You'll have one, Alexander interrupted. Kingston Enterprises will sponsor your tuition. Full scholarship. Consider it an investment in someone who knows the value of detail. Mia covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. You're serious? Completely, he said. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that power isn't just about money or control. It's about awareness, the ability to see. For a moment, she was speechless. Finally, she whispered, thank you. For believing in me. He nodded. No, Miss Harper. Thank you for questioning me. They both laughed softly, the tension breaking. As Mia left the office with the offer letter clutched tightly in her hand, Alexander turned toward the window again. On his desk sat 2 coins. One perfectly balanced, one slightly flawed. He picked up the rigged one, feeling its weight. It would forever remind him how close he had come to losing everything, and how salvation sometimes comes from the most unexpected corners of life. He placed it in a small glass case beside a plaque that read, Details decide destinies. Later that evening, as the office lights dimmed, Alexander walked through the empty cafeteria. Mia's old station was clean, silent, just another part of the building. But he smiled faintly, remembering the nervous young woman who'd looked him in the eye and dared to say, that's the wrong trick. It was such a small moment. A handful of words said with innocent honesty, yet it had changed everything. Outside, the city lights flickered like 1,000 coins spinning in the air. And for the first time in years, Alexander Kingston felt something he hadn't in a long time. Gratitude. Not for fortune. Not for victory. But for truth, spoken by someone brave enough to see it.